It was a chilly autumn evening, with the full moon casting an eerie glow over the cemetery. The rustling leaves added to the haunting atmosphere, and the air was filled with an unsettling stillness. A group of friends, curious and daring, decided to visit the old graveyard to experience the thrill of a real ghost encounter. Among them was Alex, a skeptic who had always laughed off stories of the supernatural, and Jenna, a firm believer in the existence of ghosts. They were joined by Sarah, a thrill seeker, and Mark, who was convinced he had seen a ghost as a child, but had tried to forget the encounter. As the group approached the cemetery gates, an overwhelming feeling of foreboding washed over them. They could almost hear the whispers of the past, the tales of restless spirits. But curiosity drove them forward, and they pressed on, their flashlight beams slicing through the darkness. The first thing they noticed was the unsettling silence. Not even a cricket's chirp broke the stillness. The tombstones loomed like ancient guardians, watching their every move. As they walked among the graves, Jenna's heart pounded, and her belief in ghosts grew stronger with every step. Alex, however, remained skeptical, trying to reason away the strange sensations they were experiencing. He dismissed it all as mere imagination and attempted to lighten the mood with jokes. But as they ventured deeper into the cemetery, his bravado began to waver. At the far end of the graveyard stood a weathered mausoleum, said to be the resting place of a vengeful spirit. Local legend spoke of a woman named Isabella, who had died a tragic and untimely death. It was said that her spirit had been unable to find peace and haunted anyone who dared to enter her tomb. Sarah, seeking the ultimate thrill, suggested they enter the mausoleum. Mark, still haunted by his childhood ghostly encounter, protested, but his voice was drowned out by the others' excitement. They slowly pushed open the heavy doors, revealing a pitch-black interior. Inside, the air felt colder, and the oppressive darkness seemed to swallow their flashlight's feeble light. The walls seemed to whisper, and the smell of decay hung heavily in the air. Jenna's belief in ghosts was now bordering on certainty, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. As they explored further, strange occurrences began to unfold. Items they set down inexplicably moved on their own, and chilling gusts of wind swept through the narrow corridors. Panic started to take hold of them, and even Alex, the skeptic, felt a shiver run down his spine. Then, from the darkness, a figure emerged. It was a woman in tattered clothing, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Jenna gasped and stumbled backward, her heart pounding in her chest. Isabella, the vengeful spirit, had awakened. The ghostly figure approached them, her movement slow and haunting. Her voice, a hollow whisper, echoed through the mausoleum, recounting her tragic tale of betrayal and sorrow. She warned the group to leave or suffer her curse, but they were paralyzed with fear. Mark, having dealt with a ghostly encounter before, mustered his courage and pleaded for mercy, vowing to honor her memory and seek justice for her suffering. The others followed suit, promising to respect the resting place of the departed. To their surprise, Isabella's form wavered, and her vengeful demeanor softened. She thanked them for their empathy and offered a warning to be cautious of the darkness within themselves, for it was the true source of evil. With that, she faded away, returning to her eternal slumber. As the group rushed out of the mausoleum, the atmosphere in the cemetery seemed to shift. The silence was no longer oppressive, and a faint breeze carried the scent of fresh leaves. They left the cemetery forever changed by their terrifying ghost encounter, forever haunted by the realization that there are forces beyond their understanding, lingering in the shadows of the world. And from that night on, they would never again dismiss the existence of the supernatural, for they had experienced it firsthand in the nightmare of the cemetery. In a small, forgotten town, nestled deep in the heart of the woods, the villagers whispered tales of ghostly encounters that would send shivers down anyone's spine. Many believed the graveyard was cursed, and after nightfall, it was said to come alive with restless spirits seeking revenge for their untimely deaths. Among the curious souls drawn to this macabre place were 4 college students, Emma, Jake, Lily, and Ryan. They had heard the legends and decided to put their fears to the test by spending a night in the haunted cemetery. Armed with only a few flashlights, they laughed nervously as they stepped through the iron gates and into the realm of the unknown. As they wandered deeper into the cemetery, the air grew thick with an unexplainable heaviness. Strange shadows danced between the tombstones, and the moon's silvery light seemed to play tricks on their minds. Even Ryan, the skeptic of the group, felt a twinge of anxiety deep within his heart. In the center of the graveyard, a towering mausoleum loomed ominously. Its stone facade was weathered and cracked, and its ancient door was slightly ajar. The students exchanged uneasy glances, but, determined not to show fear, they pushed the door open and entered the darkness inside. Immediately, they were greeted by an unsettling coldness that seemed to seep into their bones. A chorus of creaking echoed through the chamber, and the students felt as if they were not alone. Emma's flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Ignoring the warnings they had heard, Jake the daredevil called out to the spirits, challenging them to reveal themselves. No sooner had the words left his lips when a chilling wind swept through the mausoleum, extinguishing their flashlights, leaving them in complete darkness. Terrified, they fumbled for their phones, using their feeble screens as the only source of light. In the dim glow, they saw wisps of spectral forms drifting through the air, moving in a haunting ballet. Lily clutched Ryan's arm tightly, her fear palpable, while Emma and Jake exchanged worried glances. Suddenly, from the shadows emerged a figure with hollow eyes and a tattered dress. The ghostly apparition let out a blood-curdling scream that seemed to pierce through their souls. Ryan recognized her as Eleanor, a young woman who had died tragically many years ago in a fire that consumed her family's home. The vengeful spirit glided towards them, her mournful wail sending shivers down their spines. Ryan, ever the level-headed one, mustered his courage and spoke with a trembling voice, asking what she sought in the living world. Eleanor's ghostly voice wavered as she recounted her tale of despair and sorrow. She sought justice for her family's untimely demise, believing that someone in the village had deliberately caused the fatal blaze. Her haunting had continued for centuries, fueled by her need for closure and vengeance. Feeling empathy for the tormented spirit, the four friends promised to uncover the truth and clear her name, vowing to make amends for the past. In response, she thanked them for their compassion before gradually fading away, leaving behind an eerie stillness in the mausoleum. The friends left the cemetery that night, forever changed by their terrifying ghostly encounter. They had come face to face with a restless spirit, and their belief in the supernatural was now unshakable. From that day forward, they dedicated themselves to uncovering the truth behind Eleanor's tragic tale and finding justice for the forgotten souls that lingered in the cemetery's depths. And so, the real nightmare in the cemetery had only just begun. In the heart of a remote village, where the mist never seemed to lift and the moon was always obscured by clouds, stood an ancient cemetery with a dark and sinister reputation. The villagers spoke in hushed tones about the restless spirits that roamed the graveyard, seeking company in the living world. Every night, they would hear eerie moans and whispers emanating from the cemetery, a constant reminder of the horrors that lurked within. Despite the warnings and fearful tales, a group of thrill-seekers decided to venture into the haunted graveyard. Among them was Rachel, a brave young woman with a fascination for the paranormal, and her three friends Eric, Olivia, and David. Armed with cameras, voice recorders, and a firm belief in the supernatural, they were determined to capture evidence of ghostly encounters that would send chills down the spines of even the most skeptical. As they crossed the crumbling stone wall that encircled the cemetery, the temperature dropped, and the air became thick with an otherworldly aura. The distant howling of the wind seemed to echo the mournful cries of the forgotten souls, warning the living to turn back. Their flashlights danced along the rows of tombstones, and the silence was deafening. A thick mist swirled around their feet, concealing the uneven ground beneath. David chuckled nervously, trying to ease the tension, but even his humor could not mask the fear that gripped the group. They made their way to a peculiar mausoleum that loomed at the far end of the cemetery. Its facade was adorned with ominous carvings. Unfazed, Rachel pushed it open, and they cautiously entered the dimly lit chamber. Almost immediately, strange phenomena began to occur. The temperature dropped even further, and the walls seemed to come alive with eerie whispers. Olivia's camera malfunctioned, capturing only distorted images and strange flickers of light. Eric's voice recorder picked up unintelligible whispers, as if a spectral presence was trying to communicate. Rachel was drawn to an old, weathered gravestone that stood at the center of the mausoleum. The name etched on it was barely visible, but she could make out the word Eliza. As she touched the stone, an intense chill shot up her arm, and a feeling of sadness engulfed her. In that moment, a figure materialized before them, a woman in a flowing white gown with eyes that held the sorrow of eternity. Eliza's spirit stood there, a tragic tale etched in her ethereal form. She had died centuries ago, betrayed by a lover who had left her heartbroken and alone. Her ghostly presence filled the mausoleum, and her mournful wails pierced the silence. The friends, paralyzed by fear, could only watch as Eliza's spirit reenacted the tragic events leading to her demise. Rachel, driven by empathy and courage, approached the ghostly figure, speaking softly to her with genuine compassion. She promised to tell her story to the world, to ensure that her memory would never fade away. Slowly, the other friends joined in, expressing their sincere desire to help. As they did, the atmosphere shifted. Eliza's form became less ethereal, and her wails softened. The room brightened momentarily, as if a glimmer of hope had pierced the darkness. With a final, mournful gaze, Eliza's spirit faded away, leaving the mausoleum in silence once more. The friends left the haunted cemetery that night, carrying with them the weight of the encounter they had just experienced. They knew that they had come face to face with something beyond explanation, a chilling encounter that would forever bind them together. In the days that followed, they kept their promise. They shared Eliza's tragic tale with the world, preserving her memory for generations to come. And from that night on, the cemetery became a place of respect and understanding for the villagers, who never again dismissed the stories of ghostly encounters, but listened with somber reverence to the restless spirits that dwelled in their midst. Deep within the heart of a dense, enchanted forest lay an ancient burial ground that had been untouched by human presence for centuries. The locals knew better than to venture into its depths, for it was said that the spirits of the deceased had not found their peace and still roamed the cemetery at night. Superstitions and chilling tales kept most people away, but there were always those drawn to the forbidden, seeking to unravel the secrets of the cemetery. A group of 5 friends, Mia, Ben, Lily, Jason, and Emily, had always been intrigued by the supernatural. They had heard whispers of the haunted graveyard and decided to put their bravery to the test. Armed with cameras, a spirit board, and an array of protective talismans, they ventured into the heart of the forest one fateful evening. The forest was dense, and the canopy of trees blocked out even the faintest glimmer of the moon. Maya, the group's natural leader, led the way with her flashlight. The air was thick with mystery, and every rustle of leaves sent shivers down their spines. As they approached the cemetery, the atmosphere changed. The air grew colder, and a sense of foreboding weighed heavily upon them. A pale mist enveloped the tombstones, and eerie shadows danced across the gravestones, seemingly alive with every flicker of their flashlights. Despite their nerves, the group pressed on, guided by the chilling thrill of the unknown. They found an old, crumbling mausoleum in the heart of the graveyard, its stone walls covered in ivy, and its door creaked ominously as they pushed it open. Inside, a chilling silence greeted them. The faint light from their flashlights revealed elaborate carvings on the walls, depicting scenes of death and despair. Emily nervously set up the spirit board, and they gathered around, their hands resting lightly on the planchette. "Is there anyone here?" Lily asked tentatively, her voice quivering slightly. For a moment, nothing happened, and they were beginning to think they had come on a wild goose chase. But then, as if in response to Lily's question, a gust of wind blew through the mausoleum, making the candles flicker. The planchette started to move, seemingly of its own accord. Maya glanced at her friends, and their eyes widened with astonishment. They watched as the spirit board spelled out a nameling. "Who are you?" Jason asked, his voice a mixture of excitement and fear. The planchette moved again, spelling out a chilling message trap. Sensing the desperation in the spirit's communication, Maya asked if they could help. The planchette moved with more urgency, revealing the tragic tale of Evelyn, a young woman who had died unjustly in the forest centuries ago. Evelyn's spirit revealed that she had been falsely accused of witchcraft by jealous villagers and had met a terrible fate. Her soul had remained trapped in the cemetery, unable to find peace. The group could feel her anguish and regret for the life she had lost. Filled with empathy, Maya and her friends vowed to clear Evelyn's name and release her from the curse that bound her. They spent days researching historical records, uncovering the truth about Evelyn's tragic past. Armed with evidence, they organized a ceremony to clear her name and set her spirit free. As they completed the ritual in the heart of the cemetery, the air seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly light. Evelyn's spirit appeared before them one last time, her form glowing with ethereal radiance. With a soft smile, she thanked them and finally embraced the peace she had long sought. From that night on, the group of friends had a newfound respect for the supernatural and the spirits that might linger in the world beyond. They vowed to use their knowledge and experiences to help others and to remember that even in the darkest places, there might be lost souls seeking redemption and release.